Hello and welcome back to another episode of the On the Sideline podcast with Jackson and Kyle. I am Jackson, and I am joined here, as always, by a man who is very happy to talk about 25 of the top weapons in the NFL. Almost certainly none of them will be on the Patriots. Kyle, how are you doing?
Felt like an unnecessary dig, but I'm doing good.
Yeah, this is one of those, I didn't have something until right when I was about to go, so I really had to think of one on the fly. Not my best intro, I don't think.
It's okay. I'll forgive you for that one. I'm doing good, though. How are you doing? Your team back down from 2-0, back in the game?
Yes, very happy about the hockey that's going on. That's good stuff. Kyle, I've been better. My dog has been very sick these past couple of days. She's going to the bathroom every hour. So I got no sleep these past 2 nights. So I've had better couple of day stretches. I might be running on fumes here in this podcast.
Well, that's not good.
No, she's doing better. She is doing better today, luckily.
Good. Well, hopefully everything's good there. Hopefully you can get some sleep tonight. That'll be nice.
Yeah. I'm hoping, Kyle. But yes, we have a fun show today, Kyle. Top 25. I put it as weapons. This is going to be the top 25 skill positions: wide receivers, tight ends, and running backs. And we're just doing the best of them. We're not doing, most valuable, taking positional value out of account. How good are you? That's all we're discussing here.
Yeah, so it is going to be a little bit of everybody, and so that allows us to include more players. But I got to say, still a lot of wide receivers on my list. This is a wide receiver dominated league. I was just looking through the list of guys in all positions, and it's like, okay, there's probably a number of receivers I'm taking over running backs right now.
Interesting. So to peel back the curtain a little bit before we even get into it, what I decided to do was my top 21 are all going to have 7 of each of the 3 categories. So that's the way I decided to do it this way. So I might end up picking more tight ends and halfbacks than you are, perhaps. Also, this is completely unrelated to anything, but just before we get into it. So a while back, we did our top 32 quarterback rankings. And so I made a banner for Teddy Bridgewater, which you see here. And it just won't go off. I can't delete it. So this is just every podcast now. There's a number 19 Teddy Bridgewater that's just stuck on the thing the whole time. And so I just have to deal with that now.
Well, this is a pro Teddy Bridgewater podcast, so hopefully it stays forever. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I wanted to put that out there because at some point I'm going to accidentally hit it, and people are going to be like, "Why do you have a Teddy Bridgewater thing there?" That is why. Kyle, do you want to just get into
it? Sure, we can get into it. Do you want me to go first for this one, or do you want the first pick?
Let's have you go first.
All right. So at the first pick of the skill position draft, this feels like the right pick. I feel like the interesting thing about skill position is that I feel like has a lot more fluctuation year to year compared to any other, quarterbacks is, your top guys are going to stay at the top. Same thing with coaches. It doesn't have too much changes. I'm going with Cooper Kupp, number 1.
All right.
The Triple Crown winner, the best receiver in football last season. I thought he had a better case for MVP than people were giving it credit for. And I mean, yeah, he was just a terrific player last year. And despite all those weapons on the Rams, you knew that when the Rams needed a play, Cooper Kupp was going to get the ball in the biggest spot of the game. And he managed to get it time and time again. And it led them to winning a Super Bowl. So I'm taking Cooper Kupp, number 1.
All right, couple of hot takes there. First, I think just Kupp in general at 1. It's a bit, it's not the hottest take you ever see, but it's a bit hot. You saying that he had a case for MVP last year, I think he had 0 case. I think that this is the guy who plays the position where he can't win MVP.
Why can't a receiver win MVP? We've had running backs win MVP in the past.
Well, yeah, but that was stupid too.
Yeah, but I mean, this is an era where I would say a running back now is almost as valuable, if not more valuable, than wide receiver now is as valuable, if not more valuable, than running backs in the mid-2000s when Adrian Peterson's winning MVP. I think if we're going to actually have conversations about guys like Derrick Henry because they're rushing almost for 2,000 yards in the MVP conversation, I think Kupp deserved every bit of that conversation, if not more. I mean, this guy was a cheat code for this team. I mean, everything about this offense was constructed about, it's almost like the Stephen Curry argument when it comes to the Warriors about his gravity, about the number of guys he pulls. Everything the Rams do revolve around not only his ability to get open, but his ability to take multiple defenders with him. I think he's one of the most valuable players in football.
I get that, but who would you rather have missing for a game if you're the Rams, Matthew Stafford or Cooper Kupp? I think the answer is going to be you'd rather have Cooper Kupp missing just because of the position.
Yeah, I guess. I mean,
Okay, I don't know. I mean, that's just how I view. I think an elite quarterback can be. Anyways,
I didn't think he should win it, by the way. I just think he
no,
deserved more. Like, would it have been crazy to say he was the fourth most valuable player last year and that there was a definitive top four?
yeah, it would be crazy. It would be insane to say that he was more valuable than what? Who's the fourth best player last year? Are we talking? I don't know, like Josh Allen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know how the voting went down. I know it was basically people were talking Rodgers, Brady, and then the outside conversation was Burrow.
Hmm.
Uh, I mean, I don't think it'd be that crazy to put Cup as your fourth pick at that point.
Yeah, I think that'd be insane. And here's my reason why. It's because everything I've seen, like a top five quarterback is worth like roughly 4 wins, whereas the best receiving core compared to the worst receiving core is worth like 3.5 wins. So I think that alone, Cooper Kupp did not make this receiving core the best receiving core we've ever seen by himself, which is what you'd have to do to be worth a top five quarterback, in my opinion.
Well, I'd be curious to see how much more added value he was compared to the second best receiver, even because he had a lot more value than I would say anybody, even Devante Adams, who was probably number two last year.
Okay. Yeah. So we're just not going to agree on the maybe the value of the wide receivers in general. I want to talk about. I'm still want to argue about Cooper Kupp's value himself a little bit. We've seen this from 1 year from Cooper Kupp, right? That's the concern. Is that we have a decent sample size of him, and he's done this year exactly once. That's why I'm a little bit cooler on Cooper Kupp. I had him as number 8 on my list.
I mean, yeah, if you say you need to see it more than 1 year, but how many years of sample size do I mean, I have I mean, so the thing is like so I have multiple rookies on this list. I have guys who, kind of broke out last season too. And then on the other side, I have guys who, didn't play a lot last season on my list too. So I mean, if I've seen it from a guy, I'm willing to say that guy's kind of deserves to be on the list. And I don't think I necessarily need to wait around and say, hey, well, Cooper Kupp was awesome last season. He was the best receiver in football. I mean, what would he would have to have another season where he's the best receiver in football for you to put him number one?
Yeah, or at least another receiver where he's another year where he's had over, the guy only had one other 1,000-yard season prior to this year. So that's just kind of why it's not just that he's only been the best receiver in football 1 year, but he's only been even in the top 10 receiver conversation for 1 year.
But it wasn't like he was like, I mean, he probably would have made my top 25 list last year too, based on his 2020 production. I mean, he had
Uh,
some health stuff the years before. So I mean, I felt like I've seen enough from him to put him in that conversation. And then I mean, he was just so much better than everybody else. I thought that I put him number one.
okay. I mean, listen, to some degree, this is going to be the thing we can argue about the most, right? These weapon stuff. So, well, I wouldn't necessarily put it there. I do get it. Like if we're doing because we are doing right now for next year, who would you much rather have? He was the best last year, and maybe it was just him, getting out of playing with Jared Goff and the marriage with Matthew Stafford. That could be what has it work. And if he gets 2,000 yards next year, then I'll say, you know what, I was wrong. But I feel it's a bit recency bias for me. That's just how I view it.
That's fair. I mean, yeah, if you're looking for more, year to year production, then I get it. But I think that from what I saw last season, I'm willing to say he's going to be the best again next season. I would put
Sure.
my money on him being the best again this next season.
Yeah, listen, it's certainly possible. I wouldn't be shocked. Let's move on. Spent a while on there. I decided to go with someone who is not a wide receiver as my number one pick, who I'm going to get at number two. Give me, I think there's conversations about who's the best halfback. I think there's conversations about who's the best wide receiver. To me, this guy is the best tight end. Give me Travis Kelce, number 2 on the board. I had him number 1 on my board. Again, if you value the receiving aspect of a tight end, I don't know if anyone's done it better than Travis Kelce has. He's still in his prime. One of the most consistent guys as well. I have Kelce at 2.
Yeah, I mean, Kelsey's obviously fantastic. I had him as my number 2 tight end, but I completely get it if you have your number
Okay.
1 too, because his pass catching is elite. He's the guy that Mahomes goes to basically at all times. And, we talked a lot about, the struggles that Chiefs went through with their cover 2 schemes,
Mhm.
attacking cover 2 defenses. Well, a big reason the offense was still pretty good is because he's still, it manages to find his spaces, his zones in cover two schemes. I thought he was a little worse to start the year, and then I felt like he got back into it. And yeah, I mean, I still think he's a terrific pass catching tight end and maybe one of the best ever at that role.
Yeah, I mean, 6 straight 1,000-yard seasons for a tight end is absurd. And yeah, maybe you could argue that wasn't quite as good, but he still had some of those like classic Travis Kelce plays, like the overtime game winner last year. I believe that was against the Chargers, if I remember correctly. So we still had some fantastic ones. And also, you're right. It's funny. We talk about the struggles of the Chiefs offense. They still had the best points per drive in football last year.
Yeah, exactly. They were mostly completely fine. I mean, there were some obvious weaknesses with the situation, but at the same time, like he was still able to get his, and it's because he's so good at attacking zone schemes and finding those spaces to get open. I mean, it's hard to pick against him.
Yeah, I agree. Let's move on. Number 3, where are you going?
All right. I think I said before last season that this was the best weapon in football, and coincidentally, we have this as weapon. This guy is maybe the fastest player in the league, if not one of the fastest players in the league. He consistently is able to burn guys. I think he's an underrated route runner too, and that's Tyree Kill. Tyree Kill has constructed this defenses that defenses are forced to play cover two defenses that we were talking about because Tyree Kill exists. Because
Yeah.
I mean, they basically had to run that against the Chiefs constantly because he was such a danger going 50, 60 yards down the field because he's just so much faster than any human being on the football field. He's able to get out in space. He's excellent not only with that, but he's excellent with faking deep, coming back on that hitch route. He's great on drag routes. He does so many different things. And it was, I think, one of the most telling things when it comes to Tyree Kill was when Chad Henne was in that playoff game on that 4th and 2 play. That Andy Reid has the confidence to go to it because he knows it's going to be so easy to find a way to get Tyree Kill open for 3 yards. That's exactly what they did to get the first down and win that game.
Yeah, I also think about another divisional round heroic play he had against Buffalo, where it was just one of those classic, like you just give him the ball and he just finds a way to make it a touchdown. That like no other receiver had it as a touchdown. I still have Tyree Kill. Again, ask me another week, I'll have someone else as my number 1 receiver. I have him as my number 1 receiver. I have him at number 3 on the board, so he goes at 3. Again, he's a game-changing player, and while he's Miami Dolphins, one thing I thought of is I'm interested in, our team's going to play cover 2 against the Dolphins? Like, logically would make sense, right? You have Tyree Kill and Jalen Waddle, 2 of the fastest, elite guys at their position, although Waddle didn't do that a lot last year. But like, it's Tua, who obviously isn't known for arm strength. I'm just interested to see how that works, and maybe that's a good thing for Hill. Maybe it'll get him open more.
Hey, watch out, Tua non. They're going to show you deep ball accuracy numbers. You better watch out.
No, deep ball completion percentage. That one very specific stat. It can't be any advanced statistics, and it quickly falls apart.
Deep ball completion percentage. You better watch out, man. They're coming for you. Yeah. I mean, I think this is going to be a fascinating case study because, like you said, both of those are explosive guys. I think Jalen does it a little differently because he's one of those guys that like takes a slant and then runs 80 yards. He's the yak machine, sort of kind of in that Debo mold, although he's not as big as Debo. I think Tyreek is kind of just, I'm going to burn you downfield and beat you to the spot. It's going to be interesting because obviously, they don't have the, you could say, okay, Tua might have pretty good deep ball completion percentage, but it's clearly not the same quarterback profile as Patrick Mahomes. That's not a hot take.
Right.
This guy doesn't make the same throws as Patrick Mahomes does on the field. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how this works, how this is designed, and how they execute with this. But one of the things I've always said about Tyreek that's underrated is that he doesn't need to run 60 yards to get open. He has the threat of running 60 yards of all time, and that's why it's dangerous. But he's one of the guys who I think is underrated, coming across the middle, making plays, and making guys miss and getting to the sideline.
Yeah, that should be definitely could be interesting. Let's move on. I'm going to go with the first running back off the board. And even though I just talked about I want bigger sample sizes, for me, running back, it changes. For running backs, I want, who have I seen be the best the most recently? Just because one bad season for running back can often mean that you actually are going to be done. So I do kind of give into recency bias a lot more with running backs in particular. I had Jonathan Taylor as my number 2 on this board. He's going here at number 4. The injuries to some of these other guys are what put Taylor as my number 1 running back for me. He was fantastic last year and nearly got that. He had a huge role in getting that Colts team to be in a position to, eventually choke at the end and miss the playoffs, but they were in position largely due to his success. I think that Jonathan Taylor does a lot really well, and he is my number 1 running back as of right now.
Yeah, I had him at 4th on my list, so this fits. It's very rare you find running backs who are there. There's basically 2 running backs in my mind right now. I guess 3 because Derrick Henry was hurt last year, but for the most part, that offense is constructed around his skill set. Along with him, it's Jonathan Taylor and Alvin Kamara, who are basically the only running backs who have offenses built around their skill set and what they can do. And the Colts worked them last season. They were ready to, do everything they can. He was almost carried them to a playoff spot. Carson Wentz wasn't too bad, but this team refuses to get wide receivers, and they've built this team with a good offensive line with Taylor doing his thing. And it's just impressive that this is the kind of offense they're running, and it's still kind of working. He's still doing exactly what he wants, and he's still such an elite runner and with elite vision that it continues to work.
Yeah, when teams sold out against the run, he did do still a good job of having success. And you think about, how much of the offense was driven around him. He still had 1,800 yards at 5.5 yards per carry. That's just for that kind of get over 300 carries and still average 5.5 yards per carry. Like that usually doesn't happen. Usually when you get more carries, your average is just going to go down. That didn't happen with Taylor. So that's just an incredible statistic.
Yeah. And he is a fantastic player, and I think the Colts are always going to be in the conversation because I think they're at least going to run the ball really well. And that's looking like a steal of a pick next to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, right?
Yeah, again, I don't know how well Jonathan Taylor isn't this guy if he's wearing Kansas City uniform, but I'm sure they would love his 20 touchdowns that he had last year. Or at least maybe be a guy who can give you 5 yards per carry.
Yeah, absolutely, no doubt. Ready to move on?
Yeah, number 5. Where are you going?
Back to the wide receiver row. Let's go with the guy who I think is double team proof. That's the new Las Vegas Raider player. That's Davonte Adams, who it might be, for my money, the second best receiver last season, at least statistically. And basically, like I said, he's almost uncoverable, it seems like. He's long. He's not the fastest guy in the world, but he's a terrific route runner. He's terrific at manipulating defenders. And, he's just also has fantastic hands, too. He's almost uncoverable. You throw 2 guys on him, it doesn't matter. He finds a way to get open. Davonte Adams is the next guy on my list.
Yeah, he's someone who, while he is starting to get up there in age, not old, but, starting to get up there in age, I think he's someone who his career will have he'll have a long career, given the way that he wins. It's primarily so much through his ability to, like I said, probably the best route runner in football. His ability to run routes is second to none, I think. He was my second receiver as well. You're right, he probably was the second best receiver last year. And what's interesting about him, too, is like, I thought early on in his career, he was not this guy, right? He's someone who just consistently gotten better as the years have progressed. He, I don't think was consistently this elite guy, but these past few years, he's not just been consistently elite. He's been debatably the best receiver in football for the past several seasons.
Yeah. Honestly, he's continuing to get better and better. And obviously Rodgers deserves a great deal of, credit to that too, but it just seems like that no matter what, he just developed into this guy that has this ultimate trust. And it was, it was corny at times, but the whole wavelength thing where it's like, they could see the coverage and know exactly where they want to go, and they can adjust routes basically without talking. I think all of it together is just he's just this dynamic weapon, and it's going to be interesting to see how this works with Derek Carr too, because I think that's the next step of this. Apparently they're best friends for life or something like that.
Right.
But yeah, exactly. Because a lot of the stuff I thought was impressive with Adams is his ability to adjust to what the defense is doing at the line of scrimmage. Is he going to be able to have that sort of connection and chemistry with Carr to be able to execute that?
Yeah, it should be interesting. Also, LaFleur did a great job of help scheming him open, but the counter is that he was also their only weapon. So he was getting double teamed every play and still put up 1,500 yards. So a lot to like about Davonte Adams. Let's move on to number 6 here. Let's go with, I'm going to pick my number 5 on my board, my second tight end here, give me Mark Andrews. This might be a bit of a surprise. I think Mark Andrews is incredibly underrated. Mark Andrews is the number one target for the Ravens and has been for quite some time. He's a terrific blocker and can, it might be the second best. I think he is the second best receiving tight end in football as of right now. I know some people are going to have a certain guy in San Francisco ahead of Andrews, and you can make that argument. They're both fantastic. But I think Andrews has outperformed Kittle as of late, and I'm going to put Mark Andrews as number 6.
Yeah, I mean, Andrews was, what did he rank on my list? He was 11th on my list. I have him in the top half here. He was my number 3 tight end. But I mean, as far as pure pass catchers go, he was graded out as the number 1 tight end in football last season. So I think that I think it's completely justified that he's up in the top half of this draft. I think he's one of the most valuable tight ends. And, all this talk about Lamar Jackson not needing pass catchers and the Ravens not really running schemes that require pass catchers, he's been the one mainstay that's been consistently awesome. And then it was his best season last season that he put it all together, had that 1,000-yard season. And, he had some drop issues earlier in his career, and it seems like that's kind of gone now. And yeah, I mean, I think overall he was just he's been the guy for them. He's been that one guy, that go-to target for the Ravens over this time with this Lamar Jackson era.
Yeah, I mean, over 1,300 receiving yards last year at the tight end position. As you said, PFF's number 1 rated tight end last year. Probably was the best tight end in football last year. Again, Kittle was awesome as well. Take your pick with those two guys. I know some people are saying, Andrews over Debo is crazy. Someone in the chat says, Jesus Christ, I'm a Ravens fan, and I find this a spicy hot take. But listen, I've watched a lot of Mark Andrews tape. I think Mark Andrews is, it's not just that, but what he's been able to do in the situation around him. He doesn't really get schemed open. This is a guy who has to go out and get himself open and does a fantastic job.
Yeah. I don't think it's a little, like I said, he was 11 here for me. It's a little higher than what I had, but at the same time, I mean, I can't fault the pick because he's produced every year and he's continued to produce and get better every year. So it's kind of hard to fault Mark Andrews as a prospect in that regard because he's continued to get better and better, and he is basically the guy. I mean, the number 2 option was Hollywood Brown, which I don't think is that great of a number 2 option, and this passing game still produces.
Some reports say teams would give up a first for Hollywood Brown.
Yeah, I guess one team would. So,
yeah, at least a team would be willing to do that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's completely justified that he's in the top half of this draft. I had him in the top half as well. I still, so the thing is like, so I mean, it sounds like it contradicts my Cup argument that I would say I'd still take Kittle over him, and I had Kittle higher on my list, but. I mean, George Kittle was pretty awesome last year too. I mean, if you're going, he's still graded receiving wise, which I think is the best part of Andrews' game. He's still graded receiving wise better than Mark Andrews last season. And I still think he's in the I think I still have him as the best tight end in football, but I can understand the argument for any of the other guys.
Sure. I love Kittle as well. They were only a couple spots off on this board. Spoiler alert. The only slight difference is I just felt like Kittle's in a better situation than Andrews is. And that's why I gave Andrews the edge. But you could argue Kittle. I know, you should have strong opinions here, but I won't fault you too much if you want to go one way or the other.
Yeah. So,
all right. Moving on. This is number 6 on the board, I believe. Is that where we're at?
It should be an odd number because I picked.
Okay, that's right. 7. 7's the number.
7. Number 7. I am going with George Kittle's teammate. Some people asking for him in the draft. That's Deebo Samuel. Listen, I think Deebo Samuel is the most unique player in football. Most unique used player in football right now. San Francisco, and particularly Kyle Shanahan, who still for my money is one of the best play designers in football, if not the best. Does just about everything he can to put this guy in a position to be electric. And not only that, he is electric because he's that talented of a player. I think people jump the gun when they say he's the best wide receiver in football. I think people jump the gun when they say he's one of the top 3 guys. And it seems like he has this huge following of people who think he should be in that conversation. And don't get me wrong, he's a fantastic player. And I think he's completely justified here because he's so, you could say Shanahan helps him have this sort of success, but find me the list of guys who I think could go into San Francisco right now and do the exact same things Deebo Samuel's doing. I think that's the conversation I'd have. I don't think if there is a list of guys who can go in and do the same thing Deebo Samuel is as far as running the ball, all the motion stuff, all the stuff he's able to do to make that offense successful, I don't think that list would be very long of wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, I believe, was PFF's fifth-rated wide receiver and fifth-rated running back last year, which is kind of just an insane stat. Although, it's worth mentioning, you can't do both at the same time, right? If you're going to be a wide receiver, then you're not also helping out the running game at the same time. So there is that aspect. But yeah, Samuel's incredible. I had him at number 9. You're right, one of the most unique players. But again, kind of like what I said with Kupp, I want to see it for another year. I do want to see another year, and I'm of the belief, I don't know how you feel, I'm of the belief, I don't want to see him run the ball that much. Do it a little, but if you have a top 10 wide receiver in football, don't waste that with making him also a top 10 running back. Like, that's not as valuable. Like, keep the great wide receiver.
Well, apparently Deebo Samuel agrees with you.
Yeah.
I think I agree. I like it on occasion, obviously because it works. I don't think he should be taking like 15 touches back there. But if he's getting 3 or 4 touches a game in the backfield, I have no problem with it. Not to mention, I think a lot of it just has to do with San Francisco running backs seem to always have injuries. And so it just became kind of out of necessity. I think once the position is healthy, I think they'll, eliminate it a little bit more.
Yeah, but should be interesting. You're right. One of the most exciting players in football. Let's move on. Number 8 on this list. If we did this last year, he might be number 1. Give me Derrick Henry. King Henry goes at number 8. And I think that, he's a little bit lower on both our boards, probably for the same reason, right? Coming off an injury. Yes, he has been superhuman, seemingly, but he is still a running back. You get a big injury, that's going to concern you a little bit. I still had him at number 6 on my board, but he gets drafted here at number 8.
Yeah, I had him in the top 10 for mine as well. And I mean, I think it's underrated how good of a start to the season he was having last season. I mean, at one point, it was like he had been out for like multiple weeks and still was leading the league in rushing by a significant margin. A lot of that had to do with his week 2 performance, where he had 35 carries, 182 yards, and 3 touchdowns, and also 6 catches for 55 yards, which I think is such an underrated part of his game. But I mean, yeah, he's a workhorse. I'm a little concerned about the injury because it's so hard to guess, any moment could be the last moment for running back. And I feel like it's almost like a game of Russian roulette where you're just tempting fate, it seems like. And I'm just worried how much longer this keeps going, because it's it's a lot of these guys are typically taking time bombs. But now when it comes to Derrick Henry, this guy's an anomaly. He's a freak of nature. He's so big, he's so strong, and so fast. There's not really a lot of guys who we've seen like him in the NFL play the running back position. It'll be interesting to see how he holds up this next season.
Yeah, the whole thing about Derrick Henry, right, when you talk about running backs are overrated, is Derrick Henry is the exception to that rule. He is the guy who he matters just as much as people think a running back matters. Will he be the exception to this rule? Again, this is the guy who had over 2,000 yards just a season ago. He still ended up with 937 yards left. He still had over 1,000 combined yards, all-purpose yards last year, which is just absurd with the time he missed. So obviously one of the game's best. We just hope that he's, we see 2020 Derrick Henry again next year.
Yeah, I mean, he played 8 games last year, right? So I mean, that's insanity. So I mean, yeah, it was an unreal season from him.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Number 9, where are you going?
Give me Justin Jefferson. I feel like I'm taking all the wide receivers here. Justin Jefferson. We did our whole Chase and Jefferson comparison. I think they're pretty close to my next 2 receivers on the board. In fact, they are. So we did that in the last draft, so I don't need to go too far into it, but I think Justin Jefferson for the last 2 years has shown he's one of the top 5 wide receivers in the NFL. He's so creative. He's so skilled getting open downfield, and he's so good at catching the ball too. I think everything that he does is awesome. He's added a whole new dimension to this Minnesota offense, which is crazy because Stefan Diggs is still an awesome wide receiver too. But I think Jefferson even adds a little bit more of a wrinkle to this offense. So I think he's just as good, if not better. And I got him in the top 10.
Yeah, I don't hate this either. Again, I kind of staggered out the wide receivers a little bit more on my board, which is why I'm a little bit, that's the only reason I'm a little bit lower on him. I had him at 17. I did have 2 receivers ahead of him who have not been taken yet. But Justin Jefferson is incredible, and he's continuing to grow and get better. He can run any route that you ask him to do, and he is an elite wide receiver. He's someone who's going to get a bunch of money by the Vikings, soon. And it is kind of one of those things. If it was a risk to, get rid of Stefan Diggs. It certainly worked out for the Minnesota Vikings. I'm sure that if the Bills fans, if you knew what you knew now, that it was going to be Justin Jefferson who gets selected and he was going to be that good, you probably would have done it the other way. Although the trade made sense at the time.
Yeah, exactly. It worked out for both teams, but yeah, I mean, It's hard not to love Jefferson's game and, think about what he could be in the future. I mean, he's going to be one of these guys for years to come.
Yeah. Gets a lot of work run blocking too.
Yeah. Plenty of opportunity there for him. Not sure I love it that much, but it works.
Yeah. Let's move on. Let's go to number 10. So I guess I'm getting all the tight ends and halfbacks here while you get all of the wide receivers. I am going with the guy who I didn't select earlier. I still get him in this draft, even though that's not really how this works. But George Kittle, number 10. And again, George Kittle is incredible. He can do everything. Yes, he does get helped out with it being in the Shanahan scheme. But part of that is he fits that scheme so perfectly. He's the best run blocking or best blocking tight end in football, just in general. And on top of that, one of the best receiving tight ends in football as well. So Kittle's incredible, and you could certainly make an argument for him to be top 5 on this list.
Yeah, I mean, I had him 7th on my board. He was my highest ranked tight end. He still does everything in the blocking. I would put him up there with Gronkowski. I might still have Gronkowski number 1 as far as blocking tight ends, but they're close either way. And you hit the nail right on the head with this one. It's that, Shanahan's scheme works for him, but he also works perfectly for Shanahan's scheme. They're able to run this zone blocking scheme because he's such an elite blocking tight end. If they didn't have him there, it would be substitution patterns. It'd be a lot more obvious when they're running the ball and when they're setting up those, or when they're faking and going into passing plays. The fact that he can be on the field at all times and do all that stuff, I think puts him over the top and makes him that number 1 tight end for me. And it works perfectly to their scheme.
Yeah. This is the comment that reminded me of something. This is about the Justin Jefferson thing, so it's kind of unrelated. But Raiders could have had Jefferson, but they took Damon Arnett. Kyle, I did a thing where I went back and looked at again, it's completely unrelated, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on it. I did a thing where I went back and I looked at if the Raiders just selected best player available on the consensus big board for each of their first-round picks they've had since the Khalil Mack trade, this is the list they would have. Josh Allen, the edge rusher, Jawan Taylor, so not much there. Then DK Metcalf, Tristan Wirfs, Justin Jefferson, and Kwity Paye. Maybe in hindsight, they would have liked to do that.
Yeah. Gruden loves his guys, though, man.
That's true. Yeah, really. I mean, talk about if they had DK Metcalf, Tristan Wirfs, Justin Jefferson, could have been an all-time team. Anyways, let's move on. Number 11, where are you going?
I'm going to take a running back. Surprise.
Okay.
Let's go. I mean, you can honestly say this guy might be the best runner in football. He doesn't get to carries because of the way their scheme sets up, and they have 2 potentially top 12 running backs in football. Honestly, that's going to be Nick Chubb. I think Nick Chubb's fantastic. I think he's such a skilled runner. I think he's so good at finding zones, finding schemes, finding space. And yeah, I mean, I have him on this list because I think he's the next best running back. And if he was in a position like Indianapolis, I think he'd have just as much success as Jonathan Taylor. He's just with Cleveland, and he also has Kareem Hunt as his backup, which I think helps him stay healthy. But I think it also works. It could work both ways. Where I think he's kind of underrated almost sometimes because he's not getting the constant carries.
Right. I mean, Nick Chubb is someone who, you're right, his numbers are incredible. And he's someone who I used to pound a table for. I think there was a time when I said this guy is the best running back in football. Don't feel that way anymore. Derrick Henry's kind of clearly taken that. And then Jonathan Taylor, I think, is also clearly taken a step ahead of Chubb. But he is incredible. Again, the numbers, the guy's had back-to-back seasons where he's had over 1,000 rushing yards at 5.5 or higher yards per carry. These are fantastic numbers. He can catch the ball, and he can make these explosive plays. He can do the little things. There's no physical trait that you can have an issue with about Nick Chubb. He checks all the boxes.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think he fits the mold. And, if this guy led the league in carries, this guy would actually be in the MVP conversation because we still love running backs.
Right.
He's not given the carries because Kareem Hunt is also awesome. He's not on my list, but he's awesome. It's just so tough that he's in that situation. But, long term, it's probably going to work out for the Browns that they might get a little bit longer career out of Chubb and what he's able to do.
Yeah, I agree. And also part of his production might look, his efficiency might be a little bit better also just by him being a little bit more fresh. Although I did have, my next pick was also running back Kyle. I had him a little bit higher. Another guy, the injuries are a very real concern, but I'm still going to pick Christian McCaffrey because when he is healthy, he is, again, if we knew he was going to be healthy next year, he goes top 5 in this draft. It's just that the injuries are a very real concern. But this is a guy who can legit be a good wide receiver, not one of those like a good wide receiver halfback. Like he could play wide receiver. Maybe they should have him play wide receiver. Make that work. But what he can do, he can completely change the game. And part of why the Panthers actually looked decent the first few weeks was because they had a healthy Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, I docked him a little bit just because the health thing is a concern, and it's like we need to get him consistently on the field. I did have him at 23 because of it, but I mean, if you just took his pure skill, I mean, it definitely fits up there. I think he definitely deserves to be on the list. It'll be interesting to see if he can get healthy and stay healthy because I do think he's such a dynamic player. I hope he's able to climb back up this list because if he has another good year, I'll probably put him back in the top 10 because he's that dynamic of a running back. And it was so rare to see his skill set where, it's kind of like the reverse Deebo Samuel where you could probably grade him out as a top 5 running back and also a top 5 pass catcher in the league. It's just that he hasn't been on the field enough for me.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he would quite make the top 5 pass catcher, but he also might make like the top 1 halfback when he was back on the field. So that's got to be why it's a little bit different. But also I think that kind of works better than the other way around. Let's move on. 13. Where are you going?
I'll go Jamar Chase now. Next on my board. We did a lot of this in the top 25 under 20 players, 25 and under. Maybe the best outside the numbers receiver in football already, which is staggering seeing how it was just his rookie year. It's just incredible his ability to go up and get the ball and beat basically any defensive back in the league. I've yet to see a defensive back who can go up with him in a one-on-one situation and win the battle consistently. He even went against Jalen Ramsey, who you probably pick as the guy to be in that situation, and he still won against Jalen Ramsey. So it's got to be Jamar Chase for me.
Yeah, I think this is fine as well. I had him at 14 on my board. He goes 13. Did have another receiver ahead of him, but he's right up there. I mean, again, you're right. Teams just can't play with a single safety deep against him. Or if you are, he has to be covering Jamar Chase. Like you can't not have safety help against Jamar Chase. I would say there's other receivers who are more complete than him, but at the end of the day, the number one trait you want to have in a receiver is someone who can burn you down the field, and that is something that Chase can do. Oh, I think Kyle's talking in the background a little bit, so we'll keep going. But yeah, more about Jamar Chase. Again, someone who... Okay, Kyle, are you back? Are you with us?
I am back. Sorry.
Okay, you're good. You're good. Sorry, I kicked it back to you and then realized that you had something going on. Any more thoughts on Jamar Chase?
No, like I said, and like you said, maybe he's not the most complete receiver, but at the same time, he's one of those guys that it's like it's so hard to do anything else against him because he's so elite at that one singular skill that it doesn't really matter what the rest of his game is. And also, he does a lot of different things too, as far as the screening goes and being able to catch passes and move in space. I mean, I think everything is a complete. He's building himself into a complete receiver. He will get there.
Yeah, it's like, well, what does Steph Curry do other than shoot the ball? It's like, well, I mean, he can't do other things, but also like, who cares? Because he can shoot the ball so well. Like that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I completely agree. So
right.
he was next on my list, like I was saying, and yeah, I mean, I think he fits right in there.
All right, next on my list, 11th on my board, another wide receiver. Give me DeAndre Hopkins, D-Hop here. We saw how valuable he was to that Cardinals team when he got hurt. This is the guy who won healthy, which, again, he's going to miss 6 games now, so he's going to have back-to-back years of not having a full season. But this is an elite receiver who can be one of those guys who you do have to double team. He's very similar to a Davonte Adams in that regard. I think D-Hop is great, and I had him at number 11 on my board. He goes here at 14.
Yeah, and honestly, because we were kind of doing this for next season, I docked him a little bit because he's only going to play 8 games. But that being said, I had him at 15. So, I mean, yeah, I docked him a little bit, but at the same time, I still think he's almost as valuable as far as his 8 games are going to be just as productive, I think, on a per game basis as a lot of other receivers.
Oh, and we have some news involving your guy Cooper Kupp. We've the new contract extension, paying him it says well past 20 million a year based on new money average. I'm not sure what that means, but a little bit more money for Cooper Kupp.
Oh, good for him.
Yeah, the Ram stars massively getting paid this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, the Aaron Donald thing was pretty crazy, especially that he got no extra years. It was just, let's give you more money.
Right.
Well deserving for both players, though. They did get the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, yeah, exactly. Like you're not gonna, regardless, you got the Super Bowl, so you feel happy. Again, I thought that Hopkins had some just incredible moments, and like I said, you saw his impact when he was out. So that's kind of my thoughts on him. Want to move on to 15?
Yeah, let's keep it moving here. Someone was freaking out about it. Do not worry, because he's on the list now. Darren Waller is up next. He's next on my list. He was 13 on my board. Another one of those incredible pass catching tight ends, and he's been the most consistent weapon in this Raiders organization, I think, for a number of years now, and he continues to put up good numbers. He's next on my list.
Yeah, he was next on my list as well. I had him. It's one of those weird situations where I had him at 12, you had him at 13, but he goes at 15, just given the way the board breaks down. Again, Waller, he's not the blocker that the other guys that have been drafted ahead of him are, but what he does in the receiving game more than makes up for it. He has another guy who's been the Raiders' number one target at times, and he's done a great job at it. A former wide receiver who, has done a great work with the Raiders.
Yeah, exactly. Everything about him has been fantastic. He's done everything they wanted to and more for the Raiders. And now he's going to have with Adams, with the development of Renfrow, this offense is not just him anymore. And I think he's going to have a lot more opportunities to have bigger numbers and bigger plays.
Yeah, this could be very exciting. Maybe one of the guys I would least like to have to cover. Not that I could cover anyone who has ever stepped foot on an NFL field, but including the coaches, most of them. But I think that for Darren Waller, that just seems like not only would I not come close to covering him, but it would look very embarrassing, I think.
How do you think you'd look covering Andy Reid?
I don't know. I think I could do okay.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you got that one.
He's smart though. He'll scheme himself open somehow.
Yeah, you think so?
Yeah, I think he can do something.
Till his knee gives out or something.
Oh, come on, Kyle.
Man, listen, he's up there in age. He's not as spry as he used to be.
How dare you, sir, say anything negative about the great Andy Reid?
I'm sorry, Andy. Let's go ahead and move on.
Andy Reid, a big listener of the On the Sideline podcast.
I'm sure he's tuned in right now. He might be maddening right here. He's actually mad right now.
Yeah. Let's move on. Number 16. I'm ready for a hot take that shouldn't be a hot take. All right. People are going to say, really? But I think this guy belongs on this list. I had him at 13 on my list. Give me A.J. Dillon, the best Packers running back. This guy was legit maybe the best running back in football last year when he was on the field. Like his PFF grade was one of the best in football last year. I think AJ Dillon's incredible, and I think AJ Dillon, he was a huge. I believe it was the Cardinals game where he was just such a force. I mean, he was a force when Jones got hurt. Dillon more than made up for it, and I think was even the better guy. I have AJ Dillon here at 16.
That's a little surprising for me. I didn't have him on my list because he just doesn't have the same number of carries and opportunities as other guys. I mean, he was really good last season. I completely agree. And I'm really excited for the future of this team because they have two dynamic weapons. But I think overall, on a per carry basis, PFF graded him out really high, and I agree with it. But it's such a small sample size, I feel like, to everybody else on this list that I'm a little concerned about, how, if he's given like a lead carry role, how much would that be the same?
That's a fair point. He did still have 187 carries last year, so it's not like he couldn't play at all, but you're right. It's lower than a lot of these other guys. But I thought that he was incredible. Third highest graded PFF running back, and I thought that he played even better than that at times. I thought that this is the guy who was really good, and there were games where the Packers needed their running game to come through, and A.J. Dillon was the guy who did it. So, again, I get it, the small sample size, you can make that argument, but again, with running backs, I kind of care about what have you done for me lately. Lately, he was really good.
Yeah. Derrick Henry had more carries than him last season. So, I mean, it'll be
Sure.
interesting.
Mhm.
It's probably maddening for anybody who had who had one of these two as a fantasy running back, but it's just, it's, it, it works well for them. And I think it's dynamic for them. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, for those 100, whatever carries it was, I mean, he was really good. He was
I mean, yeah,
fantastic. And
he was 20th in carries last year, so it's not like he was like not having any touches.
right, exactly. I mean, he's
Mhm.
still in the conversation. And I mean, not many guys I think could knock over Bobby Wagner, which was still one of the craziest things ever, was just being able to move piles like that in the way he is so violently.
Yeah, I know this to be a bit spicy. I think some comments are definitely, a bit surprised by it, but that's how I feel it. And then maybe I'll make a film study on it or something, explaining my reasoning more. Let's go on to number 17, Kyle. Who do you have here?
The big talk of the draft was AJ Brown, and I'll take AJ Brown next. Yeah, I mean, AJ Brown, once again, another one of those guys who has just come into the league and instantly produced and produced a lot. And he's still a fantastic player and a fantastic wide receiver. And I expect him to do a lot here for this Philadelphia Eagles offense.
Yeah, I like AJ Brown a lot as well. Feels a bit early for me personally, but I did not have him on my list. But I did have him in an honorable mentions category because I do still really like AJ Brown. And you're right, he fit that scheme so well. I don't think he needs to be in that kind of scheme though, but I think it'll be similar in Philadelphia, so that should be fine. And he another guy who can run every route, kind of similar to Justin Jefferson, and that sort of started off as kind of just doing this one thing, but then they've opened up the offense for him and let him do a lot of other stuff, which he can do as well. And I'm interested in seeing how he does in a scheme that's not so much of a running scheme. I think AJ Brown's very good.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. And this is a big test, I think, too, for Jalen Hurts. They're giving him a guy that I think can be dynamic and change the ceiling of this, raise the ceiling of this offense. He has to go out and perform and give him some opportunities.
Yeah, I think so as well. Let's move on. Let's go to number 18, who was number 15 on my board. Another guy who I think is, maybe doesn't get the credit that they deserve. Give me Dallas Goddard, who is a guy who, again, didn't get a ton of touches early on in his career, specifically due to Zach Ertz kind of blocking him. But since we've kind of seen him take on a bigger role for Philadelphia, he's done a really good job. He was, again, he himself was PFF's second graded tight end last year. So I think once he's kind of been the guy in Philadelphia, has proved he is one of the top guys. And in our mind, we kind of view him as a second tight end because that's what he's played. But no, he was really good last year.
Yeah, I mean, he made my honorable mentions list just because, a lack of 1,000-yard season, I docked him a little bit. But at the same time, it was on a per play basis. Goddard was terrific. And they're not missing Zach Ertz at all because he's been fantastic in that role. And going from a second tight end to the main guy, I think I definitely fills that spot. And I think he's been very good. So, yeah, I mean, I completely agree that he's in the conversation. I just had him just outside my list.
Yeah. And another guy, too, where it's like, you put him in Kansas City's offense, how many yards does he get? Certainly going to be
A
more
lot.
than the
Yeah.
830 he had. Situation does come into play.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. So I think that plays a huge part in it. But yeah, I mean, he's a good football player. I really like him, and I think Philly's got to be happy with that situation and that trade.
Yeah. Number 19, where are you going?
Next on my board is Joe Mixon. So the Cincinnati Bengals fans in the chat can calm down. Joe Mixon
Mhm.
I mean, Zach Taylor loves Joe Mixon, man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
he was going to run him a lot this last season, and a lot of it was to help that offensive line, and it worked. And he got a lot of touchdowns out of that play too. And so I think he's a fantastic football player and a really good running back. He's the next running back on my list, and he's the next on my board, so I'll take him there.
Yeah, it's just weird if Joe Mixon, right? Of how do you evaluate him? Because he is playing behind a bad offensive line. That is definitely something you have to factor in. So his career yards per carry is just 4.1, but he is much better than that. I had him at 22 on my board, so he did make my list as well. I think he's a very good player. I think that he does a lot really well. He had 16 touchdowns last year, and he also, I believe, he threw a touchdown in the Super Bowl if I remember correctly.
Yes, he did. So
Mhm.
he can throw.
I like this comment too. You guys are dumb AF, laughing crying emoji. I'm not sure that's me or the chat, but either way, I mean, a lot of people are dumb AF.
Yeah, I mean, we all have opinions, man. It's okay.
No, no, it's not. Yeah, again, a lot to like about Joe Mixon. Find someone who loves you the way that Zach Taylor loves Joe Mixon.
Yeah, exactly. It works out for him because he gets plenty of carries. I don't know how much longer it's going to last, but he gets plenty of carries.
Yeah, it should be interesting. Still had 1,200 yards last year, so good stuff from Joe Mixon. Let's move on to number 20. I'm going to running back, kind of. I'm going with a guy who I struggled in figuring out where I'm going to put him. Do I put him on this list? Do I not put him on this list? Give me Cordero Patterson. Why not? Cordero Patterson was, I mean, the guy, he was so good for the Falcons last year. If I'm going to say that all I care about for running backs is what have you done for me lately, he was like fantastic last year.
Yeah, I mean, he was really good. Huge pickup for my fantasy team, FYI. Not that anybody cares about my fantasy football team. But anyway, yeah, I mean, he was really good. I didn't have him on my list, but at the same time, I can't fault you for doing it because he was so dynamic for that team as far as a runner, as far as a pass catcher. He didn't grade out well in the run game, but he still did just enough. And obviously, as a pass receiving running back, he's still one of the best in the league at it. He's a fantastic player, and I'm glad he finally found a role that can kind of use his unique skill set.
Yeah, he ended up being the PFF's second highest graded pass catching running back, only behind Christian McCaffrey. So there you go, and fifth highest overall graded halfback there. So he was fantastic last year, did a lot really well, and someone who I think that it's weird. He's getting up there in age, and he just now broke out at 31 years old. So I don't know how much he has left in the tank, but it's definitely a cool story.
Yeah, definitely, and I hope he's able to get a few more years in Atlanta. And if Desmond Ritter's the guy, I think he's really going to help Desmond Ridder be successful this season.
Yeah, let's move on. 21. Where are you going?
All right, back to the running back. Well, this is kind of a unique player. He might be he might be the running back I enjoy watching the most, and it's not Damian Harris. He's second, but I really enjoy watching Austin Eckler and what he does in that Chargers offense. I think he's such a unique talent in that he is so good in those swing pass roles, and Justin Herbert's so good at throwing them too. He gets them out there quick, and he's able to catch and get a bunch of yards out of them every time. I think he's a good runner too. I think he's a unique talent, and I got Austin Eckler next on my list.
Yeah, I like Austin Eckler a lot too. I did not have him even as an honorable mention, but now that you put him out, like I think this is the fine take. I don't hate that necessarily at all because you're right. I mean, he does kind of fit that offense well, and he's kind of a perfect guy to be in the NFL today, right? Where you're right, he kind of does the stuff that you want a halfback to be able to do in the year 2022.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he does everything you want, and he fits that modern offense so well, and I expect him to have multiple good years with this team too.
Right. The knock against him could be that last year was by far and away his most successful production year, still 911 rushing yards. So he's not someone who's going to, again, and I want that his carries, did still have over 200 carries last year. But, a career 4.6 yards per attempt. But obviously, I think that for him, it's sort of less about that and more about the other stuff he can do while still being a good running back.
Yeah, and the opportunities finally come his way. They've had guys kind of in that backfield that were working with him. And even this past season, they had Josh Jackson and a few other guys too getting touches. And finally, he's getting the opportunity to be that number one guy. And I feel like he really capitalized on it.
Yeah. So definitely a valuable piece of the Chargers puzzle. Let's move on to 22. I'm going to finally, some certain chatters are going to rejoice. Kyle Pitts does finally go here at 22. Listen, Kyle Pitts was a very good rookie receiving tight end last year. I would struggle to put him ahead of any of the other tight ends that I've mentioned, though, and again, I staggered out each position. So that's why I have him here. He's 18 on my board, goes at 22. The receiving was absolutely fantastic, but, is still young. And I would like, he's great. And I do think that, what he did as a rookie was fantastic. The sky's the limit. I'm convinced he's going to be higher than 22 next year.
I think he is too. I had him on my honorable mentions list, but yeah, I mean, I definitely think he cracks the list next season. I want to see him get a little more dynamic in the red zone where I think he can really be special. Now, part of that was because the Falcons' offensive weapons, especially when Calvin Ridley left the team, but at the same time, I want to see a little bit more dynamism in the final third of the offense, but I still think he's an incredible target, and I think he's going to be one of the best tight ends in the league for years to come.
Yeah, and another thing too about Kyle Pitts is traditionally tight ends don't, come into the league and be great right away. He did that. Now, again, he's a tight end in name. Like, is he a tight end? Like, I think that's a fair point as well. It's like he is someone who kind of is used as sort of like, the Mike Gesicki type of like, he's more of a receiver than he is an actual tight end. But at the end of the day, who cares? If you're valuable, you're valuable.
Yeah. I mean, I figured in his first year too, specifically, he was going to split out a lot more because he did it at Florida anyway. So I think he'll start to come into his own, and he'll start to be kind of more your prototypical tight end going forward.
Yeah. Kyle Pitts is incredible. And now that the chat says it, now that I talked it through, you can maybe make the argument he should be higher on this list. But again, I like all the guys that we picked before him. Let's move on. Let's go to number 23. You have 2 picks left, Kyle. It's your second to last pick. Who are you going here?
Maybe still my favorite red zone target in the NFL. I'm going to go with Mike Evans here.
Mm-hmm.
I think Mike Evans still, I mean, he continues to churn out really good seasons. Maybe not as good as like peak Mike Evans, but it's still, I'm taking very, very good Mike Evans over a lot of other receivers in the league. He's such a big target. He works perfectly with Brady down in the red zone, I think, too. And he's been so unselfish, I think, during this run too, because a lot of star receivers, I think, would struggle to work in an offense like that where the ball spread out so much because they want their touches. He's been patient, and we've seen some games where Mike Evans has 2 catches for 25 yards, and then we've seen games where he has 8 catches, 120 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So I think he just kind of works in this scheme really well. I think he's able to do exactly what he does at an elite level, and yeah, I got Mike Evans on this list here.
Yeah, we've also seen him have a game where he had 2 catches for 2 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, very interesting stuff from Evan. You're right. I mean, as a Buccaneers fan, I could gush all day over his unselfishness. And I think he's tasted what it's like to get a lot of yards on a bad team, and he's seen what it's like to get less yards on a good team. I think he much prefers getting to less yards on a good team. He is someone who cares about winning more than anything, and that's great to have, and certainly a good aspect. He fell a little bit. You're right. Like, he hasn't been quite as good these past 2 years. He just hasn't. I think that he is kind of at his best with a Jameis Winston, who's just going to chuck up the ball to him and see what you can do, and he's going to add value that way. Whereas obviously that's not Brady's style. But at the same time, he's still been a very effective player. And you're right. What maybe the best red zone threat here, and someone who still can. I mean, we saw receiving cores went like that Rams game. Like, he was the offense essentially. Him and Brady were the offense, and he still was able to make stuff happen. So definitely one of the more elite wide receivers in the NFL. I had him at number 21 on my board. Yeah,
so he was next there for me, and I still think he's an incredible talent. So let's move on.
Yeah, moving on to number 24. Next on my chart is still Teddy Bridgewater. I thought I moved that down. Okay, 24 here. I'm going to take multiple Packers running backs here, I suppose. Give me Aaron Jones. Guy was banged up last year. That docks him a few spots for sure, but is still someone who I think that when he's on can be a top 5 halfback in football.
I mean, I've been on the Aaron Jones hype train for a little bit here. I had him 25 on my list. And I still think, I mean, he's an incredible player, and everything he consistently grades out too. He's consistently been a really good running back. I think he still ended 6th in the NFL, 6th as far as PFF grades. And I mean, you look at it too, really high level running back, really high level pass receiving back, really high level pass blocking back, and really high level running blocking back, which he doesn't have to do a lot because he's a running back. But still, I mean, he's just a complete running back, I think, and he has all the tools to be successful. And it's one of those things where he might be docked a little bit because now he's basically a 2-person tandem.
Yeah. Someone said, what is Jackson's attraction to Green Bay running backs? I don't know. I didn't think this was going to be the case either. But here we are.
They're both fantastic players, so they're set up in a good spot with that group. So it's I don't think you can fault it at all.
Yeah, I think I've noticed the chat. Maybe it just doesn't love picking too many running backs in general. I think I feel like a lot of because the other guys I've had in my that I don't think are going to get selected. I'm not sure how many of those guys people would have loved earlier as well. But I wanted to get some running backs in here. Running back, we're doing best skill positions. Running backs matter, and again, Aaron Jones does have that home run hitting ability. Aaron Jones is the best deep threat on the Packers right now.
He really is. So
Mhm.
it's crazy to say that, but yeah, I mean, he really is at this point. So I think he's a fascinating player, and he's consistently turned out really good years. So I agree.
Yeah. All right. 25. Where are you going?
I'm gonna go with uh, I'll take DK Metcalf here. Still one of the most physically gifted players in the NFL. He's churning out good season after good season. I think it's gonna be interesting to see. I think this will be interesting to see him with not Russell Wilson. Um,
Mhm.
we'll see how he performs. But yeah, I mean he's going to be put into position that he's going to have to kind of produce for this offense, and we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I mean he's turned out really good year after year, and I think he's a fantastic talent.
Yeah, DK Metcalf made my honorable mentions. Was very close to making the list itself. Someone who is very fantastic, and again, he can definitely burn you down the field. He can, you might want to say what you want to say. He doesn't have the best route tree, similar to Jamar Chase. He still can do other stuff, and he's great at the most important part of football. So it's not that big of a deal. I don't think I'm with you, DK Metcalf. Hopefully things work well with. I'm convinced Geno Smith's going to get more playing time than Drew Lock next year.
Um, I mean, it will be interesting, but that still doesn't inspire a lot of confidence in
No,
his production next season. So I think
right.
it's tough.
Yeah. But hey, improve the offensive line.
Yeah, they got that going for them.
Yeah. Should be,
Don't
should
give
be
Drew
fast.
Lock time to throw.
Yeah. Gotta make sure protect Drew Lock. Let's do some honorable mentions. So first off, here's what we'll do. I'll list some of the honorable mentions and give you your thoughts on them. And then if there's any that I did not talk about, we could talk about those. First couple tight ends, TJ Hawkinson, Rob Gronkowski were both on my list at 20 and 24, did not get drafted. Definitely, I think Gronkowski, maybe not what he once was, but still a very valuable asset. And Hawkinson didn't have his best year last year, but 2 years ago was great. And we'll see if maybe they can recapture that magic.
Yeah, Hawkinson was on my honorable mentions list. Gronkowski wasn't, just because we don't get enough games out of him,
Uh-huh.
in my opinion. But it's Hawkinson, I think, is a really good talent, and he's going to be on his way to be one of those top 5 guys too. I mean, it's a fun time for tight ends. I think there's going to be a lot of guys in years to come.
Yeah. A couple wide receivers. Stefan Diggs was on my list at 23. I also had T. Higgins as an honorable mention. I think Higgins is really underrated. Those two guys also very much, could have been drafted here, I think.
Yeah, so the last 3 receivers I had on my list were Stephon Diggs, Jalen Waddle, and Keenan Allen. They didn't get drafted from my list, but they were in my list at 21, 22, and 23, coincidentally. And then who was the other guy you said? I'm drawing a blank.
Was it T. Higgins?
Oh,
Or
T. Higgins. Yeah, he was on my honorable mentions too. So yeah, I mean, he graded out incredibly well.
Yeah, and then finally for the running backs that I put at least on my honorable mentions, Javonte Williams made my list at number 25. Josh Jacobs did just miss the list, and then I also put Rashad Penny on there just in the honorable mentions. Like just again, he was great last year. I don't know why, but he was. So very small sample size. I couldn't have justified putting him on there, but I did give him an honorable mention nod. But yeah, Jacobs and Williams, I think both definitely could have been on this list as well.
Yeah, Jacobs was on my honorable mentions as well. Do you want to go with? Do you want me to go through a few of mine?
Yeah, I've listed off all of the ones that I had. So any other names?
Yeah, I mean the first on my honorable mentions list was Michael Thomas. It's so if he's healthy and playing, he has the potential to be a top 10 to top 5 guy on this list, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that we don't really know what the status is with him still, I don't really know where to grade him out. So I had him as the honorable mention, and I felt like that was fair. I want to see him on the field a little bit because we really haven't seen him in 2 years, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Alvin Kamara was another one that I took off the list because I wasn't sure how much he was going to play this season, but he did make my honorable mentions. I don't know, we'll see. There's obviously a whole nother thing that goes with that. We'll see how many games he ends up playing. Beyond that, I had Dalvin Cook, CeeDee Lamb, Chris Godwin, T. Higgins, Hunter Renfrow, DJ Moore, Amari Cooper, Josh Jacobs, Tyler Lockett, Amon-Ra St. Brown, AJ Dillon, and TJ Hawkinson. Or AJ Dillon made the list, but he was on my honorable mentions.
Yeah. I got to be honest, Kyle, I forgot about Kamara. I just screwed it up. That was my bad. I would have had him on his list. I just forgot about him.
Yeah, I just took him and Thomas were the two guys I took off because I don't really know the status, and I felt like I was just docking him because I don't know how many games he's going to play. I still think he's potentially facing a 6-game suspension. So if I'm only grading 11 games out of Kamara, does that count? But at the same time, he would easily make my list too if I knew he was going to at least be available to play all 17 games. But yeah, I definitely think he deserves to be on the list. And then yeah, the other guys are close. I think if we do this next year, I wouldn't be surprised if Amon-Ra St. Brown's on the list.
Yeah, no, I mean he was very one of the better slot guys in the league last year. So for sure, I could see that. And I know how you love your slot receivers, Kyle.
I do love the slot guys. Hunter Renfrow had to make the list. I thought about putting Damian Harris on my honorable mention. It's just fun, but
he was good. I mean that wouldn't be that crazy. I mean, I think some people would probably think that like picking AJ Dillon and Cordell Patterson is crazier than Harris.
Yeah, maybe. But at the same time, another guy who I think he's good, but he's just not going to get the carries to be like in that conversation, I feel like.
Yeah, it's fair. Some fun takes. The chat definitely blew up at certain times here. It's always interesting seeing what are the real hot takes. Like, it's sometimes like the ones like I feel like aren't that crazy are the ones that get the most blown up. Like maybe like Kyle Pitts falling a little bit or AJ Dillon picking a little bit earlier. I'll defend those takes.
Yeah. No, I definitely think you can. I think, and the crazy thing, I mean, it really just depends on what your liking is, because I think I mean, just looking at our list combined compared to quarterbacks and coaches and all that, this is definitely probably the most variance we've had on the list before. So yeah. I think there's plenty of debate on it going back and forth.
Yeah, it was a tough list. It's a fun one. We got to figure out a show for next week. But Kyle, I believe that this means that next week we have a show, and then in 2 weeks, we will be starting our season preview. It's that time of the year.
Yeah, we're getting close to the season. It's going to be a good time. And yeah, like you said, we're almost there.
Yeah, it's like this. Kyle's just being nice. That Dillon pick sucked, mate. I usually agree with you. All right, well, okay, can't win them all, I guess, Kyle.
I really like AJ Dillon. I don't want to say anything bad about AJ Dillon. He was on my honorable mention, so I don't think it was crazy, but I didn't have him on my list.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, can't please everyone.
You can't make everyone happy here. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. But again, what I've said about I made some lists on my channel. It's like the point of these lists is to get people angry. Like that's why we're here to get people upset at us. We're doing our job wrong if we make a list and everyone says, "Yep, that's correct." Not saying we're going to throw in hot takes or say something we don't believe in. Just that no matter what we do, people are going to get upset. That's the whole point of doing a list in the first place.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So, they're fun. They produce conversations, and the chat's been fun today. Everyone came in spicy. Now we're talking about high school football and who's the best. So I don't really get this. So we got a lot of stuff going on. Right.
Yeah, I think I saw some basketball talk in here as well. The chat's been all over the place, but very fun. Also, yes, talk about the Cooper Kupp contract. That's more details will come out. Apparently, it could approach the $25 million per year mark. So roughly 3-year deal worth $75 million. So paying a lot of money to the big three there, really big four with the Rams, but they're good for players. So we'll see how it works out.
Yeah. So I'm not. I don't want to steal this take. Somebody did say this. I just forget who.
Okay.
It feels like that receivers are just mad about this Christian Kirk contract, and everybody wants a new contract now.
Yeah.
Does that feel like the case to you?
Yeah, it's weird, right? Because I feel like for me, if I'm a GM and Cooper Kupp comes to me and says, "You can't pay me only $2 million more than what Christian Kirk is getting," my immediate reaction is, the Jaguars are weird. They do weird things. The Jaguars will pay you more money if you want to go there, but they're just stupid. That's what they do. No other team would pay him that much money. But it seems like, I guess, other teams I guess maybe the logic is like Cooper Kupp probably would counter that with, well, yeah, but there's other dumb teams that would pay me way too much money also. So I could also go somewhere else. Someone else will shell out way too much money. There's plenty of dumb teams. I think that's kind of why, that's why the Dolphins, I'm not saying it was a dumb decision. I'm saying the Dolphins did end up going out and paying Tyree Kill $30 million a year. So it's like, if he did get traded, he probably would get more money. So I think that it actually does kind of make some sense.
Yeah. No, I do think it makes some sense. And obviously, all these receivers brought themselves to the negotiating table after it. So it kind of seems like it might be the case at this point. I don't know.
I think what it is people are showing that Jackson Kruger Sports YouTube video to the GM saying that wide receivers are more valuable than edge rushers, and now the league's finally coming around.
Yeah, it's all your fault. All the GMs are going to be knocking on your door, ready to, unplug your router.
Yeah, I'd be more afraid of if the edge rushers are still knocking on my door because they're not getting paid. But that'd be a real concern. I don't need TJ Watt showing up at my door anytime soon.
TJ Watt would be the one to show up and say, "You didn't think I was the defensive player of the year?"
Yeah, that would not be great. But hey, maybe what do I have to have Tyree Kill defend me? I don't love my odds in this scenario.
I mean, I guess you could pick a wide receiver. Maybe you probably have to take Kupp in that situation, right?
I picked Cooper Kupp to defend me.
Yeah, if you had to pick a wide receiver,
no. Why would
DK Metcalf?
Yeah, DK Metcalf is the obvious number one.
I don't know. Kupp has some nastiness to him, man. He shows it in that blocking.
Maybe. I don't know. I guess so. I was thinking maybe a Mike Evans could be a good one as well.
Coming up on next week's show, the top 25 receivers you'd pick to help you in a fight. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. AJ Green did a good job beating up. Andre Johnson, right? Of the Texans. That's the answer. I'd feel 100 feet tall behind him.
Andre Johnson. I mean, he's a big guy.
Well, did you see what he did to Cortland Finnegan? Yeah. I feel okay.
I mean, it's a little different from Cortland Finnegan to TJ Watt.
Perhaps you might be right, but still, I feel okay there. Kyle, who do you got? Warriors, Celtics tonight.
I don't know, man. The Warriors have been able to have these leads in both games. It just seems like even Boston's best scheme, I think, requires just 48 minutes of focus, and I just don't know if they're able to get that. So I think I got the Warriors in this one. I think that they win this one, and the Celtics even it up to tie 2-2.
Okay, interesting. I'm kind of rooting for the Warriors. I don't know. I think it's just fun, like the whole giving a team a dynasty type thing. I think it's interesting.
I can't take the Draymond stuff, man. I just can't do it.
Yeah,
I love everything about the Warriors except for that. But I mean, it's just it's so ridiculous. Like I don't mind guys who try and like play with an edge and do all this different stuff. But it just feels very obvious that the referees run a different agenda to Draymond Green than everybody else. And it's the same thing I feel about with Patrick Beverley. I don't know. It's weird.
I get all that. I used to hate Draymond. I think Draymond's great for basketball. I think that like you want those guys to exist, like the Richard Shermans of the world, the guys who talk the talk and then do walk the walk. I think that they're great for the sport.
Yeah, I think that's.
And hey, he's a podcaster too. Maybe he'll come on the show sometime.
I'm not counting on that, but we'll see.
Yeah, well, potentially. Should be fun.
LeBron was looking for podcasts. Should we? Should we send the invite?
Do you think LeBron would want to talk about the top 25 best blocking wide receivers next week?
Yeah, maybe. we could do like a top 25 wide receivers in the NFL and where LeBron would think he'd rank among them.
That would be good. What would be the show to get LeBron to go on? Maybe like a wine testing podcast?
Wine testing? Maybe. Or like I feel like it'd have to be like a sports and culture show, I would say.
Potentially, yeah. I do not think LeBron's going to come on this podcast.
Well, I'll keep sending the invite. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, Andy Reid, if you have any contacts, let us know. Should be fun. Kyle, let them know where we can find us on Twitter before we head up.
Yeah, make sure to follow us on Twitter. That is at Jackson Kruger. Make sure to follow me at by Kyle Gronin, and make sure to follow the account page at On the Sideline JK. That is at On the Sideline JK.
Yes. Again, if you like audio only podcasts, anywhere you get your podcast, it should be available on the audio feed. So certainly check that out. Kyle, that's your show. Any final thoughts?
92 days till football season. We're getting closer and closer. Just counting down the days.
It's happening. And we only got the ways in 2 months, we'll have preseason football, which, I love preseason football. I think it's one of the most underrated things about football. It's so stupid, but it's a great, everyone overreacts to every little thing. It's a lot of fun. Working in the media, it's a lot of fun, preseason football.
I hardly watch any of it, man. I really do.
I dive all in. I love it.
I'm usually diving into college stuff by the end of preseason football, so it's hard for me to actually like watch stuff. But
That makes
I think it just shows that I have too much stuff going on. I need to cut some stuff out of my life.
Yeah, you need to cut some stuff out of your life. Big time for preseason football.
Yeah, I'll figure something out.
Yeah. Okay. Again, thanks to everybody for listening to all this nonsense. We do appreciate it. We'll be back next week with some show, and then be back in 2 weeks with divisional. We're going to do our season previews division by division. Should be fun. So again, thank you to everyone for watching or listening. We do appreciate it. And of course, until next time, see you later, alligator.
Peace.